He did say recently, when talking about police reform, he did say that police needed to be trained to shoot people in the leg.
Yes.
So, and Lord knows no one who gets shot in the leg ever dies. I mean, come on. There's nothing vital in your legs.
No. That femoral artery, it's not a big deal.
Nah, that'll heal right up. But rub some dirt on it.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 239. And we're joined once again by our good friend, Pastor John Bennett from the St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. Pastor, welcome back.
Come on, man. Hey, how's it going? Good to be back with you.
You survived a trip to California.
I did. I survived. I managed to not get imprisoned while I was there. And I got to eat some tasty In-N-Out burger. So
there you go.
But of course, I mean, the highlight was getting to officiate my brother's wedding. So that was great.
Very nice. Well, congratulations to him and the bride. And it's good to have you back, safe and sound in a more, well, slightly more reasonable state. You do have a governor and a mayor who are up there who are of questionable ideas, but certainly a lot freer in Minnesota than in California. So glad you're back safe and sound. And
yes.
Welcome back to all of you who are joining us today. Thank you for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week, especially those of you who are listening for the first time. This is what we call our Clinging to God and Guns show, where the pastor and I discuss, all sorts of things. Today, we're going to be talking about the election of all things. In case you just arrived from Mars, you probably know that we're just 9 days away from the 2020 election, which I suspect is not going to be decided in 9 days.
Well, thanks to John Roberts and the other liberals on the Supreme Court, Pennsylvania gets at least 3 days after. So
awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. I figure we're going to see, given that Biden, we know for months, has been assembling an army of lawyers to contest the results in case they don't go the way he expects. We're going to see all kinds of lawsuits and recounts and shenanigans. So it's going to be an interesting time over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd discuss it. Yeah, buckle up is absolutely right. And interesting that, you know, the media has been gaslighting us for months to think that election fraud's not a thing and that Trump is not going to leave office if he were to lose the election. And so if Biden does refuse to concede, or if Trump says, wait, we need to recount, they've set it all up so that, you know, hey, we told you so. We told you he wouldn't leave. He's a dictator.
Right.
So thought we'd discuss that. And of course, the last of the presidential debates, which happened the other night. But first, I do want to thank the awesome men and women who make this show possible, the members of the Reformation Gun Club. And this week's shout out goes to Gavin from Hickory, North Carolina, Greg from Holly, Michigan, Steve from Grovetown, Georgia, Robert from Monroe, Georgia, Calroy from California, from Boron, California, and Melvin from Holt, Missouri. Thank you all so much for your support. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded, and that means we don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We rely on the generosity of members of the Reformation Gun Club to keep doing what we do. And if you would like to join them and find out more about all the benefits, check out armedlutheran.us/gun club, or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. Okay, we're looking ahead to the 2020 presidential election. It can't get here fast enough. If you're like me, I'm kind of tired of the whole politics thing. this, I guess every 2 years we all get tired of it because they hammer us over the head with it. There's no way to get away from it. And I don't know, like we said earlier, even when the election's over, I don't think we're going to get away from it for probably weeks after that, maybe months. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody in our audience is considering running for any sort of public office, I would vote without even giving it a second thought to the guy whose campaign platform is, we are going to penalize and consider it a misdemeanor at the very least. All these stinking unsolicited text messages and phone calls.
Gosh. Yes.
And they use virtual phone numbers, so you block one and 10 more come up after it. You know, it's like
I know.
Cutting the head off a hydra. Just, it just grows back.
Well, one of the things I went before in thinking about what we were going to do for the show, one of the things that I had considered before we actually sat down and watched the debate the other night was to look at this complaint that some non-Christians usually level at us, those of us who are Christians and who are and who support Trump. They say, well, how can you support somebody like Trump? How can you? He's morally despicable. How can you as a Christian support that kind of person for president? And the assumption being maintained by the media is that everything negative said about Trump is true and that Biden is somehow a saint. So given that narrative, I thought let's look at this, let's dig into this election and let's assume that narrative is correct. Let's assume Biden is just good old Joe, that he's not this repeat plagiarist guy who lied about the way his wife died and is a serial fondler and sniffer of women and girls, and whose son is suspected of being a pedophile crack addict who sold access to our global enemies. Let's assume that none of that's true.
Boy, that's assuming quite a bit.
That's a huge assumption. But just for the sake of discussion, let's put on our make-believe hat and believe and assume that none of that is true and that he's pure as the wind-driven snow, just the guy from Scranton, and that all the worst things that are said about Trump and his personal life are true. So let's, and I found a few quotes from Luther that I wanted us to sort of apply to the current situation and sort of, because I think it brings up some interesting commentary given who these two guys are. To be qualified to rule, Luther wrote, it's not enough to be pious. A jackass is also pious. One may find a pious person who can hardly count to 5. End quote. So if Biden is the pious one, based on what we've seen, is he a jackass?
Well, since the mascot of the Democrat Party is a jackass.
I completely forgot that. That's
Luther was quite prophetic without even realizing it. Yeah. It's 3 letters, JOBS. If anyone remembers from, I don't remember if that was from the 2012 campaign or not.
Yep, I think it was.
Yeah. Or the kids like to come up and feel the hair on my legs. Corn Pop's a bad dude. Yeah, I think jackass is a pretty good. I mean, I know for this little experiment, we're assuming that he's pious, which most certainly he isn't. We can get into that later if there's time, but
right. I don't know whether you noticed this. I'm sure you probably did, but every time that Joe had to recite statistics, he had a really hard time. He stumbled a lot and he overstated the numbers and then had to revise them, or it was like 50 million, no, 50,000. It was, and he had to correct himself a number of times. So the whole thing, hardly being able to count to 5, might actually be prophetic as well, because I think he's got some mental stuff going on, dementia issues that make some of that stuff, especially when he gets flustered, difficult.
Yeah. Did you notice the moment where he couldn't remember Rudy Giuliani's name, and then he said, "Oh, I'm not going to mention it." He stopped himself, and then as soon as he remembered, he's like, "Oh yeah, Rudy Giuliani." So,
or when he referred to Mitt Romney as that Mormon guy.
Mormon guy.
So numbers are not easy for old Joe, and it's when he is in a structured environment where he read off a teleprompter and all the there's no crowds throwing questions at him or trying to heckle him or where he doesn't have Trump sort of badgering him across the stage, or he's got a compliant moderator like George Stephanopoulos. He looks a lot better than he really is.
Yeah.
And when he's off the cuff, then you get the corn pop stuff and the Mormon guy kind of comments.
Right. Or we were all created by, the thing.
He did say recently, when talking about police reform, he did say that police needed to be trained to shoot people in the leg.
Yes.
So,
yeah, because people shot in the leg can't shoot back. There's this mysterious connection between the mind and the leg that if you get shot in the leg, you're instantly incapacitated.
Well, it hurts.
Well, maybe Joe Biden's watched a lot of movies and. Maybe he thinks that you get shot in the leg and your leg's going to flip back 36 feet or something.
Right. And Lord knows no one who gets shot in the leg ever dies. Right. I mean, come on. There's nothing vital in your legs.
No. That femoral artery, it's not a big deal.
He did once say, and this was during his time in the White House, he did sit down in an interview and talk about how you only need a shotgun and you should shoot a home intruder through a door through a closed door. So
right, and there was some other quote where he was talking about firing off 2 shots on the back porch, and they made a really funny. Somebody made a really funny auto-tune YouTube song about it. It was great.
Yep. So turning our eyes towards Trump now, while we know he's not pious. He's not everything he's done is great. He does have a checkered past, but he is a successful businessman. And if you strip away his personal flaws and just look at the political record over the last 3.5 years, because that's all we got to look at, right? We've got 47 years of Biden. We got 3.5 of Trump. It's actually really a much better record than I think anyone who voted for him would have thought.
I would go even a bit further to say that Trump's record in 3 years and 9 months, considering the opposition that he was faced with, I would say he accomplished more in that brief period of time as someone who before this was not a politician. He doesn't consider himself to be a politician now, but when you're president, it's kind of part of the job description.
Right.
But I think he accomplished more in this period of time than any other president in the last 50 years. I would say, considering what he was up against, I'd have to say maybe accomplished even more than Ronald Reagan did in his first term. And Reagan wasn't faced with this kind of insane opposition that he's faced with.
No, Reagan had a fair bit of opposition, but it was not rabid, nonstop investigations and exposés and nightly news talking. Yeah, the nightly news was not predisposed towards him, but you didn't have 24-hour news that spent, the whole day doing nothing but Orange Man bad. That's what, you're exactly right. That's what Trump's been up against. He's given us better trade deals, lower taxes. Before the COVID thing hit, greater economic growth, especially in low income and minority communities. Oddly enough, historic peace agreements, stuff that Obama and Bush and Clinton couldn't accomplish. He's been mostly pro-life, generally pro-Second Amendment. He supports law enforcement. He's tough on crime while at the same time recognizing that we need prison reform. He's been tough on China's predatory trade practices. He's supported border security, which every candidate throughout history gives lip service to, and then once they get in office, they're not interested anymore because that's a potential voting block. And interestingly, he's opposed unnecessary foreign interventions, which is exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, imagine this, a president who, before being elected, said, I don't want us in any excess foreign entanglements or any wars. And hasn't started a single war. And he's brought troops home. And he managed to do that while wiping out ISIS, wiping them off the map, and it's what was the other group? I forget what they were called.
Al-Qaeda?
Not Al-Qaeda. Well, maybe I'm thinking of ISIS. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. And I'm not even drinking whiskey tonight, so. But, he's done that. We talked, you mentioned mostly pro-life, and he's done something that no Republican that I can think of has done in recent history. Now, even though he promised to defund Planned Parenthood, he didn't fully defund them. He defunded them by a very small amount, but he managed to do that, which every other Republican has said that they would do, but never did. Yes,
it's a start. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, yay, he's defunded Planned Parenthood, but anytime you can get cuts to Planned Parenthood done, great. It's a move in the right direction. Yeah. And he spoke at the March for Life, which is something no president has done, as far as I know, right?
Right. He is the first. No president has ever done that before. My basic assumption of the character of President Trump is that, yes, he has his moral feelings. When it comes to women, he's kind of a sleazebag. You wouldn't want someone of his character dating your daughter. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
But his biggest problem is he has no brain-to-mouth filter. He thinks something, and he says it, or he tweets it. And
it comes right out.
Yeah. Without taking... if he would just pause for 3 seconds to say, would this help my campaign or hurt my campaign? His Twitter page, I'm sure, would be awfully boring if that happened, but...
That's true.
Yeah. So, and I think I've used this analogy on our show before, that would you rather have a president who is who says good things, but has horrible policy, or a president who says terrible things, but has great policy?
Yep, and that gets us to another, probably my favorite quote, and the one that I really wanted to delve into, which was this quote from Luther that says, the reasonable question has been put whether it is better to have a good but imprudent ruler or a prudent and personally bad one. Moses calls for both a good and a prudent ruler. However, if both qualities cannot be had, a prudent ruler who is not personally good is better than a good one who is not prudent. So, without even considering Trump and Biden, what is Luther getting at here with this quote?
He doesn't dismiss the importance of character, but character isn't enough when it comes to being a good ruler. I would say character plus competence. You look at, use the biblical example of Solomon, that, God said, I'll give you whatever you ask of me. He asked for wisdom. And for him to ask for wisdom shows that he had a fair amount of wisdom before he was ever asked by God what he desired. And that's what's necessary for a good, quote unquote, ruler. I don't think anybody likes to use the term ruler when it comes to our presidents.
Right.
But I would say I want the guy who's going to govern wisely, and frankly, you know, there are some, especially within the libertarian realm, that would frown upon this. I want a president who is going to care about the general morality of the nation, and that's where it comes to things like trying to defund Planned Parenthood and that sort of thing. Those things that are good and moral and upright should be promoted by a wise ruler.
Right. So, assuming that in this, to analogize our current situation, assuming Trump is the wicked one of the two, and again, we've already sort of made it clear that neither one of these guys is pure as the wind-driven snow. Is Biden, would he be, based on his 47 years in office, would he be a prudent ruler?
And the answer is pretty clear on that. Unless you've full-on drank the commie Kool-Aid, no. He would not be a prudent ruler.
Biden was wrong about the Iran deal, wrong about the Paris Climate Accords. He opposed and continues to oppose the originalist judges like Thomas and Alito and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch.
He was involved in the borking of Robert Bork.
Yes, he was. That's true. I forgot about that. He has hinted that he supports sort of weaponizing the judiciary by packing the courts. He said in the debate the other night that his support for the crime control bill of 1990 was a mistake. But he still signed it. There's room for him to walk back and say, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, or that wasn't a good idea. But at the time, why wouldn't he see that coming? That bill with its mandatory minimums would end up impacting low income, particularly minority communities, putting people in jail for long periods of time for nonviolent drug related crimes. That's on him.
Yeah, especially, I mean, in this last debate, he was talking about how these mandatory minimums, many of those are in place because of that stupid crime bill.
Yep. And he acts like he disavowed it by basically saying, yeah, that was a mistake, and then saying, well, we did something about it by releasing 38,000 prisoners. But the other thing that I wish Trump had come back with on that claim was, remember that they didn't really vet those prisoners that they released.
Right. How many of those, and that's one of the things that hasn't been brought up yet, but how many illegal immigrants were released because of Obama-Biden policies that
the catch and release thing that Trump hit him with, yeah.
How many of those people have committed murders? You know, and I wish, of course, you know, everybody could be a Monday quarterback, armchair quarterback. Yeah. But you know, when Biden was talking about how many of you people have that empty chair at your Thanksgiving meal and all that kind of stuff, you know, it would have been great if Trump would have said, how many of you people have had an empty seat at your home for the last several years because a criminal that Obama-Biden let out killed your loved one?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would have been a great comeback, because that was really the strength of Biden's appeal in that debate, was to turn and look the camera, you know, straight in the camera, not at the moderator, but at the camera, try to make that personal appeal to voters and to tug at heartstrings with emotional appeals, but not really no policy, no concrete plan. You know, it was always the emotional appeal, and I know that's what works with the left.
Yes, and honestly, if Biden or his handlers thought that he was going to gain any points with independents or undecided voters with that tactic, I don't think it worked. And the reason I don't think it worked is because the numbers don't comport with what he was saying, the message that he was trying to convey. Yes, there have been a lot of people that have died from COVID. The strong majority of those people were in nursing homes. And these lockdowns imposed in many places by Democrat governors is what kept many of these loved ones from seeing that elderly, mother, father, grandparent in the nursing home, which they ended up later contracting COVID without ever being able to see their loved ones before they passed. So most of those people weren't sitting at the Thanksgiving table to begin with. I mean, not that I'm trying to in any way minimize the loss that people have experienced. I know people who have lost friends and loved ones during the time of this pandemic. At the same time, I don't think it's a tactic that worked. I don't think it resonated with people the way that they thought it would. Might have resonated with the base, but I don't think it worked well with the independents and the undecideds.
Yeah, I don't think so. It sounded very hollow to me.
It seemed gimmicky.
Yeah, because he kept being the go-to shtick. It was, don't answer the question about what would you do specifically. And I thought the moderator was very good. There were times when I got annoyed with her because she would talk over Trump a little bit, and Trump did a very good job of not giving in and finishing his thought. But then she would always go back to Biden and give him a little extra time to respond. But that whenever she asked questions and asked for specific policies and specific ideas from both candidates, Biden went to instead of answering the question with specifics, he always turned to that emotional appeal. And it became tiresome.
Yeah, it was a feelings versus solutions debate.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. He also, now getting to guns, which we haven't really talked about much, but he voted, as we all know, he voted for the Brady gun control bill. And that included the Clinton gun ban in 1993, that we finally, that in 2004, thank goodness, was sunset, but it didn't do anything to stop violent crime.
No, in fact, during that period, crime increased, and as soon as the bill sunset, if you look at the statistics, you see a gradual decrease from the time of the sunset of that bill. You see a gradual decrease of violent crime. So clearly, the bill wasn't working.
Yep.
And again, I think Chicago is a perfect example of that. That the Brady bill basically treated the entire country, as far as regulations concerning what you could and could not purchase, treated the entire country like California and Chicago, the way that they still are even today.
Well, and Biden also, one of the things, the other shtick that he kept going back to was, I'm going to be an American president, right? I'm not red state versus blue state. I'm going to be an American president. I'm going to be a president for all Americans. Unless, of course, you're a gun owner.
Yes. Yeah.
Then he's not so much.
As he was saying that, I was thinking to myself, that's interesting, because Trump and his family did not take money from the Chinese government or the Russian government or the Ukrainian government.
He voted for the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which resulted in another spike in incarcerations, which doesn't help the black community. And I spent a little time this week just looking at his legislative record. At 47 years, he co-sponsored or sponsored over 3,000 bills. About 10% of those became law, and a good percentage of them were sort of those virtue signal-y kind of bills, like recognizing National Mammogram Day, or, establishing the National Drug Abuse Awareness Week, which is no small irony given his son's recent issues. But there's not a whole lot of there when it comes to, he has a voting record, but he doesn't have a whole lot of a record when he talks about one of the things, and I think Trump was very effective at this in the debate, talking about how Biden is a lot of talk and not a lot of solutions. If you look at his record, he doesn't have a lot to lean on in terms of what he has introduced, the legislation he has introduced himself that became law. It's just not there. And I thought that was a very effective attack by Trump.
Yes. And I think, as legislatively, he's kind of like a teddy bear. Yeah, he looks nice on the outside, but once you cut into him, you realize it's nothing but fluff on the inside. And some of that fluff is rotten and putrid and corrupt. So
that's true. The teddy bear stuffed with Chinese and Ukrainian cash.
Yes. Might even find Hunter Biden's crack pipe in there too.
He's more like that teddy bear from, what is that movie with the talking teddy bear that says bad words?
Oh, yeah. I know what movie you're talking about, but I can't think of it off of the top of my head. Buddy, I think was the name of the movie, wasn't it? Or something like that? No, I don't know.
That's more like it. So like we said earlier, though, if you strip away all the kind of the personal stuff, and I think that's the problem that people have with Trump, they can't see the forest for the trees kind of thing. They get so caught up in the personality, and it's abrasive, and it's combative, and sometimes it's stupid, and it says, like you said, there's no filter between the brain and the mouth, or the brain and Twitter, and that is off-putting. But if people could stop for a second and separate themselves from that, they would see that I think he has, again, not liking the word ruled, but he has ruled prudently with, like we said, the trade deals and the taxes and the opposition to abortion and peace agreements and all of the rest, opposition to gun control.
Yeah. If you look just at his policies and nothing else, I think the worst that you could come up with is that he has signed some ridiculously expensive spending bills.
Yeah.
He, after the Las Vegas shooting, he was talking about, putting the ban on bump stocks, which I think was kind of stupid because that opens up the door to a whole lot of other crap. But aside from that, when you look at just the policies, there really isn't a whole lot. I mean, my biggest complaint about him earlier on was his talk about these tariff wars with China. And that's actually been beneficial to the economy. It didn't have the detrimental effects that I thought it would as far as the cost of goods and services, because, everything, when you have to buy stuff and that cost is increased because of tariffs, that stuff costs more. And so the services cost more associated with that. And that didn't have the negative effect I thought it would. So really, there's not a whole lot that you can say about his policies that have been terrible.
No, his trade policy, while on the surface you say, man, the tariffs, that's terrible. On the other hand, it's sort of that wielding the big stick thing that forced, in several cases, has forced our trade partners to come to the negotiating table and to work out better trade deals.
Right.
And what is it that Ben Shapiro says? Trump is a hammer.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes he hits a nail, and that nail, if it's the media or one of his political opponents, we all cheer. That's great. But sometimes he hits a baby, and it's not so great.
Right.
Now, we've discussed on the show several times, and we may actually, I think what we'll do is, we've already gone fairly long on this so far. So at this point, I think what we'll do is we'll save the rest of this discussion for the Reformation Gun Club as an extra. If you would like to hear more of this conversation and comment on it, be sure to check out the Reformation Gun Club. For as little as $1 a month, you get lots of extra content and our monthly online hangouts, one of which we just had this past Friday. So, Pastor, thank you so much for doing this.
This was a lot of fun, and I'm looking.
We haven't done a political kind of roundup in a while, so there was a good idea to do. So, thank you for coming up with the idea and for being here for it. And folks, if you have any questions or any comments that you would like to make, or have a question or an idea for a topic you'd like us to discuss in the future, Be sure to visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, next week, episode 240 is going to be our, will that be post-election? Almost post. No, that will be right before the election. So the last show before the election, before Doomsday, is going to be a variety show with content from the entire cast. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.